What is a fate worse than destruction for an aircraft carrier? Pirates. Picture this. USS Bennington, a mighty Essex-class aircraft carrier, is docked in Sydney Harbor. This floating city of steel, worth over $1 billion and armed with enough firepower to make a small European country jealous, is about to face its most formidable enemy yet, a group of college students dressed as pirates. 10 pirates boarded and took over the USS Bennington aircraft carrier. It was at that point a home for 100 planes. These pirates somehow boarded the USS Bennington, avoided 3,000 sailors, took over the bridge, caused a ship-wide emergency, and demanded money. The USS Bennington was in Sydney to help celebrate Coral Sea Day, a holiday commemorating the US Navy's victory over the Japanese Navy. The Australians, eternally grateful for America's help in keeping their country invasion-free, decided to show their appreciation in the most logical way possible by pulling off the most audacious prank in naval history and causing worldwide embarrassment for the US Navy. Because nothing says thank you quite like international humiliation, right? Picture the scene. The massive carrier was docked right across from the Sydney Opera House, looking all majestic and freedomy. Most of the 3,000-strong crew were either still out painting the town red or passed out in their bunks, sleeping off a night of diplomatic relations with the local pubs and ladies. Out of 3,000 sailors, about 2,500 were still in various stages of unconsciousness. The stage was set for what would become known as a chapter in naval security titled "How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Naval Security Breaches." Enter our intrepid heroes, or villains depending on your perspective. 10 University of Sydney students who clearly skipped their Common Sense 101 class. Armed with toy flintlocks and more bravado than brains, these modern-day buccaneers rode up to the Bennington in the cold dawn light. Now, you'd think approaching a US warship in a tiny boat might raise some alarms, but nope. These lads simply marched up the gangplank like they owned the place. One of the students later recounted, "No one seemed to be on guard, and no one asked us what we were doing. We simply marched up the gangway, whistling a jaunty sea shanty." But wait, it gets better. They eventually encountered a guard who, instead of immediately arresting them or sounding the alarm, decided to play tour guide. When asked how to get to the bridge, this helpful sailor pointed the way, adding a half-hearted, "You can't go up there," which the students promptly ignored. The guard quickly forgot they existed. It was like the setup for a bad joke. 10 pirates walk onto an aircraft carrier. The merry band of buccaneers sprinted across the 800-foot length of the carrier, miraculously unseen by anyone else. It's as if the entire crew had collectively decided to play the world's stupidest game of hide-and-seek, and these pirates were winning. Upon reaching the bridge, they found 2 poor technicians who had drawn the short straw for morning duty. The new self-appointed captain, a medical student named Paul Lennon, clearly missing a few lectures on common sense and self-preservation, stormed in and ordered one of the technicians to turn on the public address system. Then, in his best pirate voice, which we can only assume was terrible, he yelled, "Now hear this. The USS Bennington has been captured by Sydney pirates. Now give us your valuables." Another student, demonstrating the kind of decision-making skills that make mothers proud, decided to crank it up a notch. He spotted 2 handles labeled battle alarm and chemical alarm and thought, why not? And he yanked both. As the alarm hoots echoed through the ship, officers and men tumbled out of bunks. Sailors appeared from everywhere and rushed for battle stations, likely thinking they were under attack by Russians or perhaps a particularly aggressive pod of dolphins. Meanwhile, 8 of the 10 pirates decided it was the perfect time for a leisurely stroll through the officers' quarters, soliciting donations for a local charity. Because when you've just fake hijacked an aircraft carrier, why not do some fundraising? Now, you'd think that at this point, anyone, would have noticed a group of college kids in dollar store pirate costumes wandering around during a ship-wide emergency. But no, the crew was too busy running around like headless chickens to question why Jack Sparrow and his merry band were asking for spare change. The pirates, probably feeling a bit disappointed by the lack of treasure, continued their tour of the ship. They asked a few sailors for donations, but only received weird looks in return. It's hard to tell if the sailors were more confused by the alarms or by the fact that they were being solicited for charity by Captain Hook. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of unchecked piratical shenanigans, our brave buccaneers encountered a Marine who had enough brain cells left to ask the million-dollar question, "What are you doing here?" Captain Lennon, realizing the jig was up, eloquently responded, "Of course, we didn't have any answer." It was at this moment that the crew suddenly realized they'd made a mistake of titanic proportions. The Navy, not known for its sense of humor when it comes to hijacking warships, who knew, rounded up the pirates faster than you can say, walk the plank. They were paraded around the deck like the world's lamest prisoners before being unceremoniously booted off the ship. One sailor later recounted, "It was quite entertaining but scary to those of us who were sober. Within 15 minutes of the alarm starting, secure from general quarters was announced. No explanation was given, probably because we just got punked by a bunch of college kids. Doesn't sound great in an official report." The next day, as you might expect, the story hit the headlines faster than a sailor hitting the bar on shore leave. There was at least one reference to Pearl Harbor, because apparently a surprise attack by the Japanese Navy is totally comparable to a surprise attack of college kids kids in eye patches. The whole fiasco was so embarrassing that the Royal Australian Navy felt compelled to save face for their American allies. They announced that, of course, the United States Navy had known about the gag all along and had simply played along. They also claimed the Bennington's crew had been extremely generous, allegedly donating $20,000 in today's money to the students' charity. It's unclear whether this donation actually happened or if it was just a desperate attempt to spin this colossal security fail into a feel-good story, as the Day of Unity turned into a day of embarrassment for the USA. The U.S. Navy Department, in full damage control mode, issued an official statement in Washington. Sydney University students who boarded the aircraft carrier Bennington in Sydney last week had permission to board the ship. This statement was about as believable as claiming the carrier had been attacked by a giant squid. The students, however, weren't about to let the Navy lie. In an interview, they happily contradicted the official story. Nonsense. We took the Americans completely by surprise. They didn't know a thing about the morning raid, which was a complete surprise to them. They were not advised of it in advance because we ourselves didn't know about it, as we did not plan it until the last moment. Desperate to salvage some dignity, the Navy Department issued another statement claiming the students were given permission to board the Bennington to solicit funds from the crew for a local charity, and that they had come aboard under the observation of the ship's security watches. This explanation raised more questions than it answered, like, why would you let charity solicitors anywhere near the bridge? And what exactly were these security watches watching? In a final attempt to sweep the whole debacle under the rug, the Navy dismissed the incident as a harmless prank, reflecting in no way on Navy security. They urged everyone to consider the incident a harmless prank perpetrated by duly identified guests of a ship in a friendly port, because nothing says top-notch security like letting someone shout, "We've captured your ship," over the PA system. No charges were filed against the perpetrators, probably because the paperwork would have been too embarrassing to file. The incident did, however, succeed in giving 3,000 U.S. sailors the wake-up call of a lifetime and providing the rest of the world with a story about the day a group of college students outsmarted the mightiest Navy on Earth. In the end, this hijacking went down in history as a testament to the power of audacity, the dangers of excessive shore leave, and the importance of maybe, just maybe, having someone sober on guard duty. It also serves as a reminder that sometimes the biggest threat to national security isn't a foreign power or advanced technology. It's a bunch of bored college students with a silly idea and too much free time on their hands. The aftermath of the incident led to some rather amusing changes on the USS Bennington. For weeks after, sailors on guard duty were reportedly asking everyone, including high-ranking officers, to prove they weren't pirates. One particularly zealous ensign even demanded that a high-ranking officer do a pirate impression. The officer, to his credit, gave a rousing rendition of "Yo-ho-ho" and a bottle of rum. Some crew members, embracing the absurdity, started greeting each other with, "Ahoy, matey." No one was fired, but I would not want to be one of the guards who was supposed to guard the carrier. So, can pirates capture a U.S. aircraft carrier? Well, if they're Australian university students and the crew is sufficiently sloshed, apparently yes. Just don't expect the Navy to admit it without a fight. A PR fight, that is.